Hi, welcome to AMATIC's Teaching Tips video series. I'm Fred Felden from Coastline College. I've been teaching math online since 1999, so I got a bit of a head start on the whole remote thing, and I'd like to pass on a few tips I've learned over the years, especially when it comes to teaching mathematics specifically. We've all dealt with a number of crises over the years. The coronavirus pandemic is probably right up there with the most stressful of them all. Wouldn't you agree? I'm amazed at the variety and creativity that individuals are coming up with and sharing to cope with the pandemic, like these tennis pros, adapting to new limits and new restrictions. For example, I see players are starting to return to the court now, but there's no more handshakes. They touch racket tips after a match instead of shaking hands. So the best time to adapt is actually in a crisis. Here's some of the questions I hope to answer in the next 15 minutes or so. It's a lot to cover in a really short period of time. So if I go too fast, feel free to pause the video, rewind it, contact me for more details. My contact info is on the last slide. Your number one priority is to maintain instructional continuity. Of course, that goes without saying. But the crisis now is a new reality. You really have to expand on your flexibility. Keep in mind that no one has all the answers. You have to search deep into yourself for alternatives and options. But I'd like to emphasize that you should not repeat. Do not think that you have to create all new content. There are so many publishing companies, textbook authors, and internet superstars out there with pre-made content for you. Here's a few. These are all excellent and vetted sources, so there's no need for you to reinvent the wheel. Yes, you should absolutely personalize your course with instructor-created material, but a little bit of that goes a long, long way. What you do is not nearly as important as what your students do. Online instructor presence now takes on a whole new meaning when teaching is in a time of crisis. You need to visit your course website daily, read and if appropriate, respond to students daily, not necessarily with all the answers, but just your presence, your support, your advice, and your encouragement. The elephant in the room is the pandemic, and your students and you are all in this together. If it helps, don't worry so much about being judged by outside accreditors or even the federal government. They understand. They support you. One of, if not the biggest challenge of our discipline is the notation. It's really awkward to try to type math on a keyboard. You know that. As a professor, if you haven't already done so, now is the time to invest in the latest technology that includes digital ink and paper. Here's a few options. You could also just use a document camera and a nice dark pen, or even fasten your cell phone to a tripod and point it downward. I use Camtasia to make instructional videos, a full-featured screen recording program, but you could just as easily create video content on your cell phone. Every course management system has a math editor. Teach your students how to use it, or how to capture their own work on paper and pencil in a multi-page PDF file using a cell phone scanner app. You should also use screen capture software. I use Snagit pretty much every day. With digital ink, you can use color, highlighting. You can capture screenshots and graphing calculator displays, pages from the ebook. I think it was like 10 years ago, I bought my first tablet PC and I stopped using the whiteboard completely, forever. It's been my professional tool of choice for online and in-class teaching ever since. Our teaching, by the way, should not just consist of content. So many community college students have had negative and unpleasant experiences in their math classes. We need to pay special attention to the affective domain, and that can greatly increase rates of success and retention. Find ways to show empathy. I recommend checking your gradebook every week. Proactively reach out to the 20% of the students who are struggling to stay caught up with the syllabus with words of advice and encouragement. It's called the 80-20 rule. You may want to think about spending 80% of your time and effort proactively reaching out to the 20% of the students who need it the most. I also recommend you expand topics of discussion beyond homework questions. You're trying to relate your class to math in the real world, right? So go for it. Think outside the box. There are a huge number of sources of enrichment to engage, motivate, and challenge your students. Here's some of my favorites. Next, we come to a very controversial aspect of remote teaching. That is, should everything be asynchronous or not? We're all busy. Professors often select to teach online, and students often sign up for online classes exactly because they have no time in their schedule for class meetings. But here's a secret. Many students actually do come to enjoy the Zoom class meetings. I've even had students tell me that they miss them after the semester's over. Is that sweet or what? That's the ultimate compliment. On the one hand, yeah, people are tired of Zoom meetings. But on the other hand, students are looking for engagement and community wherever they can find it. With webcams and audio turned on, you can choose gallery view, and it's like you're all in the room together. Can you see that? This picture shows 50 people. And you can very quickly scan the room and look for body language, facial expressions. It's even better in smaller groups. So all this is probably new to you, and here are some of the challenges you'll face. I've heard from many colleagues that they schedule webinars and office hours, and no one shows up, and if they do, no one has any questions. The antidote for all that is a huge investment in upfront preparation. Here's what I recommend. Begin with an informal chat. How's everyone doing? You healthy? Your family okay? And tell them how you're doing. Ask students when you got stuck, where did you go for help? What is your support group? So this kind of stuff is really critical. Don't skip it. You can use a discussion prompt. Here's a few examples I've used successfully. It doesn't have to take long, 5 minutes even. Spent this way is invaluable and essential. Don't skip it. Here's some more ideas. You can have a discussion or just have students type something into the chat box. I've used these prompts to take attendance, where I require everyone to type something into the chat, and I tell them I'll be taking attendance this way. All right, then you can get into your content. I suggest not waiting for questions at this point. Save that for later. You know where students struggle. You've been teaching this content for a long time. You know what they need help with. Preload your lecture with several questions for discussion, participation, and group work. Think hard enough and you'll find the latest webinar platforms make it possible to incorporate participation, group work, and active learning that you've used in the classroom. It can be done. Here's some activities you can look at. I hope this bulleted list can open up your thinking on how the latest technology can allow you to adapt active learning to your online class. Just keep in mind, the less you lecture, the more they learn, the more fun they have. Give every one of these a try during the semester. This classic resource of assessment techniques by Angelo and Cross are worth taking another look at. There's one takeaway you get from this video. I hope it's this. The absolute best feature of Zoom is the breakout groups. Be brave, experiment with it. It took me a semester or two to really become effective at it. Tell your students it's new to you, and can you please practice with them? They'll understand. They'll enjoy it, actually. Don't skip this part of the learning curve for teaching online. I found by doing this, actually, I got to know my students as well as, and maybe even better than I did in the classroom. It's so much fun breaking them up into groups, going in and out of each group and spending a few minutes with them. It's a small group. It's like stopping by and visiting a small group of 2 or 3 or 4 students and working with them in an intimate setting. To overcome the difficulty of our notation, look at this last bullet on this slide. Here's a low-tech solution. Sharpie pens. Have everyone practice with this. They can show their work, they can display their graphs. Make sure everyone has a Sharpie pen handy for each and every class. Finally, at the close of the class, open it up for questions. Thank everyone for attending. I've been averaging about 80% attendance at these webinars. It really helped listing the meeting date and time in the schedule of classes. I got permission from our VP of Instruction to do that. Confirm with anyone and everyone who asks that yes, these webinars are mandatory. Here's a sample recording of one of my webinars. Feel free to check it out. But here's the bottom line. Requiring attendance at weekly webinars made a huge difference and really increased in success, especially last semester, where despite the coronavirus pandemic, I ended up with an 87% pass rate. I'm amazed. This is a class, this is a college-level college algebra class of mostly underprepared students, so I'm very happy with these results. Okay, our last topic in this video is assessment. In the past, our math department required human proctors for all midterms and final exams. The coronavirus stopped that. We began using Proctorio, and unfortunately, I found it greatly increased techno barriers, attrition, stress, anxiety. I quickly decided not to focus on surveillance. By the time finals rolled around, most struggling students had dropped the class after an emergency drop with refund policy was allowed. So I truly felt the honor system was followed, where students' work was their own. Exam scores closely matched grades and overall coursework. I really found no need for additional stress. I was over it. But using Zoom, Proctorio, Canvas, My Open Math, My Math Lab, take-home exams, etc., the 35 instructors in our department came up with a lot of creative ways for assessment. There's really no one correct best solution. Discuss it amongst your department. I do recommend rethinking assessment. 2 of my favorite mentors, Francis Sue and James Tanton, have some excellent food for thought on the matter. Traditional high-stake assessments aren't the only, not even necessarily the best way to measure knowledge and understanding. Check it out. Think about it. It's not too late to change the way you assess your students. In conclusion, here's my closing thoughts. It's taken me 25 years and the plethora of rich interactive technology that's now available. I think at this point in time, for the first time ever, I can finally say it is truly possible to achieve the highest levels of active learning and create a genuine sense of community in online classes, more so than I ever thought possible. Thank you very much for watching this video. Feel free to contact me for any reason, and good luck teaching in this new time of crisis.